Hey everybody, this is the first update on my angelfish here, my albino red eye, since discovering some growth on it this morning. At this point I'm assuming it's a Columnaris infection because I had one recently in another tank and it just seems too unlikely that I got some weird random fungus or something growing in here. In all likelihood I cross-contaminated the tank somehow. And what I suspect happened was the Chinese algae eater in this tank probably was not getting enough protein in its diet. My fault. I wasn't putting enough algae wafers in there. And it was probably latching onto the side of the angelfish a little bit and chewing on the slime coat to get protein. And when it does that, if it does it too much, it not only removes the slime coat, but it'll injure the fish. And any fish that's being really stressed out, as you can imagine, that would be a pretty stressful situation. Their immune system gets suppressed, and then when you couple that with an open injury, you're just setting yourself up for an infection. And I think that's what happened. So I need to make some changes in this tank. Obviously, I need to get on top of feeding more higher protein foods to the algae eater that's in this tank. I also salted the tank this morning before leaving for work, and then when I got home I did some more work to it. But before we get to that, I'm happy to say that if you can see the side we're looking at now, that is not the side that was really badly contaminated. There was some fuzz on that side, but not nearly as much, but you can see it's pretty much gone already. And I'm going to try to look straight down, and if we look on the opposite side, you'll see a little bit of a white patch there. I guess you can kind of see that. I really wish this guy would turn around. He's being very contrary. Let me dabble my fingers in there a little bit. See if we can get him to move a little bit. So if he turns and faces us, we'll be able to see his left side, and up basically right in a little patch right about here, he has a big fuzzy spot. But I'm happy to say the fuzz looks like it's almost gone, and now it just looks like sort of a bare white patch where he's been scraped or something, but the fuzz looks like it's gone. And that was when I got home from work after about maybe 5 hours of nothing but salt in the tank. And when I say salt, I mean aquarium salt, not marine salt. I did 1 teaspoon per gallon. It worked out to be close enough to 1 cup of salt for this tank. I went by 50 gallons because of all the rocks and everything offsetting some water in this tank. I'm sure it doesn't hold 55 total. So at 50 teaspoons of salt, or roughly 1 cup, that seems to have helped out a lot of the actual physical fuzz, whatever that stuff is, whether it's bacterial colonies or whatever we're looking at there, and that's what I'm assuming that is bacterial colonies. The salt must have really beat it back quite a bit. So I'm happy about that. I then, after seeing that, I went ahead and I did about a 25% water change. I resalted to make sure I'm still up to a pretty good concentration of salt. I might actually be a little higher than I was before. None of the fish seem to be distressed, so I'm not worried about that. I also, in addition to the water change while I was in there, I knocked a lot of that green cyanobacteria that grows in this tank. It doesn't grow in this tank all over everything like that strandy, terrible stuff in my other tank. My black ghost knifefish tank. It just grew in like little green slimy sort of sheets. You can kind of see a little bit of it on the glass down here. It's really strange looking stuff. So just using the simple siphon, I was able to knock it loose off of a lot of the leaves, and just got a lot of that out of there physically. So I removed a lot of the cyanobacteria. I did about a 25% water change. I also added another power head in this tank. I think that's a 240 gallon per hour power head. It's not a really strong one, but it moves a lot more water, and I've got it angled upward. So my concern this morning was when I poured the salt in the tank, I could tell there wasn't a lot of circulation in the tank. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this Columnaris outbreak. it just concerned me because I lost fish in this tank not too long ago due to oxygen deprivation. I had a lot of stuff going on at the time that was different. I had the almost no movement on the surface. I had plants covering the surface. I let all the biofilm collect and so on and so forth. So there were a lot of other contributing factors into oxygen deprivation. But it got me a little nervous, and then when I saw today how little water circulation was actually in this tank, I added this other power head, and now you can actually see how this hatchet fish is sitting in the current and doing what they like to do, which is facing upstream and just sitting in the current. So I've really increased the water flow in this tank. Another thing I did that really increased the water flow in this tank was, if you see that branch, that's got the Java and this Anubias growing all over it. All this monster Anubias and Java back there is rooted to and attached to that piece of wood. It goes all the way down the length of the tank. This little point here is the other end of it. So it was lying down in front of this power head and just completely stopping all of the flow of water. So now that I've got it lifted up in between the two power heads, you know, the small one is blowing the water up and the larger one is blowing it slightly down and across the back, and it really opened up how much water flows around in this tank just by moving that stick alone. The additional power head really changed it. So I'm liking the way the tank is coming together. I just am now concerned about what's going to happen with my angelfish here. And finally, after I did my water change and resalted the tank, I began treating with the Maracyn 2, which is specifically for the Columnaris. So if it is Columnaris, the Maracyn 2 will take care of it. So I began the treatment of that today. We've got 5 days to do that, and we'll see where we go from there. So at this point, I guess I would just say go ahead and make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up. There will be plenty of updates coming up on this tank. This is my Angelfish tank. And we'll stay on top of this, and hopefully we'll get through this without losing any fish at all. We're looking good so far, so cross your fingers.